I didn't know how bad my GPA was until I plugged it into CASPA. So I knew it was on the lower end, but CASPA creates a different GPA for those who don't know. So I would not go based off of your school's GPA. And CASPA calculated my cumulative GPA as a 3.1 and my science GPA as a 2.99. And that was crushing to me when I saw those numbers. I was told through the pre-PA club at my school and all the online forums, basically a 3.0 for science GPA is like bare minimum. And even with that, like good luck, you're probably not going to get in.
I've kind of joked this feels like a PA school interview because we just talk about why you want to do this and how you ended up here. No pressure at all, though. We can jump in if you just want to tell us who you are and we'll go from there.
I'm Sara Matthews. I'm a board certified PA working in OBGYN and Urogynecology right now. I recently graduated PA school from Lincoln Memorial University back in August of 2023, so still a pretty new PA. And prior to PA school, I went to the University of Florida and I majored in biology and was part of the pre-PA club all 4 years of college.
So you went in thinking PA, maybe?
Yes. So I learned about PA very early on my freshman year of college. And prior to that, I was leaning towards medicine, but hadn't really decided whether I wanted to be a doctor or a nurse. And actually hadn't heard of the advanced practice providers. So early in college, I had a couple illnesses that landed me in the hospital, and someone came in that I thought was a doctor. So I'm like, oh, thank you so much, doctor. And they're like, no, I'm a PA. I'm like, what does that mean? And they sat down with me and explained exactly what they did. And that was like a life-changing moment for me because it just clicked for me. I was like, that's what I want to do. And so from that point on, I looked into how to go that route and saw that my school had a pre-PA club and I got involved the next week. And from there, I was like, I'm going to be a PA.
Awesome. It's so interesting because still a lot of people aren't finding the career or finding out about it or deciding on it until junior, senior year of college or after college. But it's slowly starting to get more, not popular, more recognized, but it's still not, like kindergartners going to school, like, I want to be a PA, not happening quite as much. So if you knew you were a PA that early, what did you do as far as choosing your major and what you're going to study, and like how'd you make that decision? And then did you start trying to get patient care experience, or where did you put your focus then?
Yes, I had gone into college majoring in biology because it encompassed anything that I could want to do with medicine. So I just stuck with that and figured if I happened to change my mind along the way, I'd have all the prerequisites for either PA or something else. Joining the pre-PA club, they really educated me on everything that was required for PA applications. And I got enrolled in a quick CNA course and became a CNA my freshman year of college and started gaining patient care hours through that route all throughout college, and then tried to pick up little other jobs along the way that were offered through the pre-PA club. So I had a decent amount of patient care experience going into the PA applications.
Can we talk about GPA? You mentioned maybe GPAs weren't the shining star of your application,
Yes.
but here you are, you're a PA. So tell us more about the grades, the academic side of things.
Yeah, so I didn't know how bad my GPA was until I plugged it into CASPA. So I knew it was on the lower end, but CASPA creates a different GPA for those who don't know. So I would not go based off of your school's GPA. And CASPA calculated my cumulative GPA as a 3.1 and my science GPA as a 2.99. And that was crushing to me when I saw those numbers. I was told through the pre-PA club at my school and all the online forums, basically a 3.0 for science GPA is like bare minimum. And even with that, like good luck, you're probably not going to get in. So I had pretty much zero hopes of getting in the first round, but I thought, I already plugged in all this stuff. I might as well just finish the application and keep my fingers crossed and go from there. I think one thing that really helped me was, as I mentioned, in the beginning of college, I had a decent amount of medical issues that I was working through that kind of got me in and out of the hospital a lot. And I was in the process of trying to find answers. Without a treatment course, I really wasn't able to focus on school that well, but I was trying to, so I never dropped out of any classes, and I ended up with a decent amount of C's due to being in and out all the time. With that said, my junior year, I had finally figured out what was going on, started on treatment, and was feeling a lot better. And there was a very clear trend in my grades. So I went from C's to pretty much all A's. With that said, I really tried to focus my personal statement on showing that I persevered and I didn't give up. And it would have been easy for me to drop out of college for 2 years and get better grades if I came back, but that would have set me back pretty far. And I didn't want to do that. So with that said, I also showed how through my experience, that's how I found out about the PA profession. So it's really even an experience that I'm thankful for today, because I probably would have never found this profession had I never been sick. GPAs, they're not something to really highlight in your application, but if you have any sort of growth in your grades or in your personal life, I think that's something that should be highlighted, and that was highlighted in my interviews. I actually got 2 interviews the first year. And both times it was highlighted like your GPA isn't the highlight of your application, but your perseverance and the way that you explained that in your personal statement was really a highlight of the application.
That is very impressive, because you're right. You hear 3.0, you're never going to make it. Typically, I don't say that as much as you have to meet the minimums of the programs of what they're requiring. So what did you meet the minimums for where you applied?
Yes. So yeah, do not apply to programs that have a minimum. And that kind of made it to where I couldn't apply to a lot of programs that I had initially put on my list that I wanted to apply to. You probably are wasting your money for the schools that have a set requirement. With that said, I tried to find one. I joined like a low GPA pre-PA club on Facebook.
Yeah.
And I also did my research to find schools that either didn't have a GPA requirement or ones that had lower GPA requirements that I fulfilled the requirement for.
So how many schools total did you apply to?
10.
10.
Yes.
Okay. And then 2 interviews and
1 wait list, 1 acceptance.
Okay, nice. I know you said the lower grades were at the beginning and had some good upward trends. Were any of the C's or grades in your prereqs, or were they non-prereqs?
Oh yeah, biology, chemistry, most of the prereqs I would say I had C's in.
Did you retake any, or you're just like, let's go?
Nope, I didn't retake any.
Oh my gosh, I want to read your personal statement.
I did have some A's in there. I did get an A in anatomy and physiology, and then I got A's in the higher courses that weren't required for all PA programs, but one of the PA programs I applied to did require physics, and I did get an A in that. And then I took biochemistry, which was not required for PA school, but some still looked at, and I got an A in that. So with that said, I did plan to retake some if I hadn't gotten in the first year, but it just did not work out though.
I love that you went for it though, and that you're like, let's just apply.
Yes.
Like, why not? I think that's great. Did you apply during your junior year, senior year? Did you take a gap year?
I took a gap year. So I graduated senior year, and after being a CNA, I took a position working as a medical assistant full-time. And I did that because I wanted to try to offset, again, my poor GPA. I didn't know how poor at the time, but I knew it was on the lower end. And so I thought, I do have a decent amount of patient care hours, but I wanted to get even more, and I wanted more hands-on experience. So I really spent some time looking for a job after college, looking for mentors and allow me to learn new skills and really be hands-on. That experience was invaluable and I think helped me through PA school more than I ever would have known.
We don't hear bad things about gap years, really just that they are valuable, and most of the time people feel more prepared moving forward into PA school after that. Going into the application cycle and now looking back, I know you said make sure you know what your GPAs are. Don't just look at your transcripts, which we will say a million times. But is there anything else that you wish you would have done differently or that you feel like would have helped you out?
Yes. So I didn't fill out all the CASPA application parts on day one. I kind of waited a little
Okay.
and I wish I would have started that earlier. And then also, I wish I would have started asking for letters of recommendation even prior to CASPA opening. You don't want to get your letters of rec before CASPA opens, but it's a good idea to figure out who's willing to write you one and who would write you the best one. And they can start working on it prior, especially PAs and doctors and nurse practitioners are busy. So giving them as much of a heads up as you can is probably in your best interest.
Yes, totally agree. It always takes longer than people expect. It's just tedious.
Yes.
There's just a lot of steps involved. So, did you end up moving for PA school?
Yes, that's another thing. If you're applying with a lower GPA, I would say you have to be a little bit more flexible in the schools you're willing to apply to and where you're willing to go.
Yeah.
The schools I applied for were all over the US, and I just said, if I got in the first cycle, I'm just going wherever will take me. I ended up getting into PA school in Tennessee, but I don't have a family or kids, so I was afforded that flexibility where I could just get up and go for school. I ended up moving from Florida to Tennessee, but I wouldn't trade my experience for the world. It was awesome to experience a new town, new culture, and the school that I went to was really great.
That's awesome. How long was your program?
27 months.
Okay, pretty average. How many students?
We had about 80 graduate.
Wow, that's a big
Pretty
class.
large program.
Did you feel like you knew everybody or
Yes.
like not really?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I feel like I
That's
can name
interesting.
every single person that graduated. I may not have talked to everybody on a regular basis, but at least here and there I said hello to everyone. We kind of
Yeah.
got oriented with each other through different groups that we would have throughout PA school, and you pretty much had a group with somebody throughout PA school.
Was your program hybrid at all? I feel like a lot of the programs are moving into keeping some of the virtual aspects. Did y'all do that or did y'all not have any virtual stuff?
No, it was not hybrid. The only
Okay.
times that we would do online lectures would be throughout our clinical year if we'd need to meet.
Oh,
That
interesting.
would be
Okay.
online just because our clinicals were also spread out.
Okay. I always ask this. What was the hardest part of PA school?
I think the hardest part was even through college, you know that you have to learn how to learn, but PA school is a different beast.
Yeah.
And so you have to learn how to learn all over again. The things
Yeah.
that worked for you in undergrad may not work at all during PA school. So the first month or two was
100%.
a big adjustment, just trying to put together all the information and trying to actually retain it rather than just memorizing it and then forgetting it the next week, which kind of was feasible in undergrad, but not for PA school because next week you're learning something that builds right on top of that. So that was a
Yep.
really hard part. And then also, I would say learning how to take breaks. It's hard to not feel like you need to study every single second of the day to be successful.
Yeah, need breaks, and I agree. And you have to do it very quickly.
Yep.
Like there's not a lot of adjustment time. You just have to go with it and realize when you're struggling, like what needs to change and change it very, very quickly.
Definitely.
PA school, it just flies by because it's just so much all at once. And like you said, I like the idea of it building on each other because that's so true. The thing I always kept in mind too was that the stuff I was learning was actually important and actually going to affect a patient or a person. I remember in undergrad in some classes, probably chemistry mainly, being like, why am I learning this? Like, why? This is not useful information. I'm not going to use this, or am I going to use this? But in PA school, you're learning like the stuff you want to learn because you're going to use that later on. while you were in PA school, did you know you wanted to go into OBGYN and urogynecology, or was that something that kind of came later from rotations, or how'd you end up there?
In high school, I didn't know what I wanted to do at all, but we were required to do an internship. And just out of the list that we had to pick from, there was one at the hospital. And I said, oh, okay, I'll do that one, sure. And then you just get placed in a random department and you figure that out on day one. So I got placed in labor and delivery. And I fell in love with it. With that said, I went in with the mindset of I really love women's health, but I was
Yeah.
open to other things. And as I went through rotations, I found some interest in other things, but my mind kept going back to OBGYN. If there is a specific specialty that you're interested in, you don't want to like hurt other people's feelings. Like if you're on your general surgery rotation and be like, oh no, I hate surgery. But you can say, I'm interested in surgery, but I also really like OBGYN, because a lot of times they'll be like, oh, you like OBGYN? Okay, let me try to get you more experience or exposure in that field, even through
Yep.
what we're doing here. Through that, I actually got to see a lot of urogynecologic surgeries, and that's how I got interested in that field additionally. And then I just got really lucky and found a job where I'm able to do both right now.
That's really cool. I want to hear more about your job. But yes, totally agree on the preceptor thing. Did your class say like, oh, you might get job offers on rotations? That was like a big thing people talked about. What I found to actually be true was a lot of the preceptors we used took students all the time. So they weren't really looking to hire. Like they just liked having students, and kind of they like got free labor, to be honest, but they weren't necessarily looking to hire. But going into that, I was like, oh yeah, like I need to come out of this with a job, so I need to tell them I love what they're doing so that they'll hire me, even if I like don't want to do it, even if I hate it, whatever. Which I didn't really hate anything, so I did that at first, and then I started doing what you were saying and saying like, I do enjoy ER, but I really think I want to do general surgery or dermatology or whatever. And that's when they started giving me more specific things to do in cases. And they'd be like, oh, go suture. You want to do this? Like, you go suture, you go do it. And they know people. So after I started doing that, almost every rotation, they'd be like, oh, well, let me ask so and so if they're hiring or they know of anything. And so they have friends and networks that they can use that then help you get a job you actually want versus, oh, I'm saying I want to work in Pete's and I really don't want to work in Pete's. So I thought that whole networking, building a community side of things was an important part of rotations and getting the specific experience too. So what does your schedule look like? What's like a day in the life at your job?
I typically work somewhere between 8 a.m. and 4 p.m. And I usually get there a little bit early to go through any results that I have and call patients and then look through what my day ahead looks like. And I only work 4 days a week, so that's nice too. I work in OBGYN, but we don't deliver. So the call schedule is just phone calls, and I answer phone calls 1 week out of every month.
When you say you don't deliver, you mean like PAs don't deliver or your office?
My office does not deliver.
Oh, interesting.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. We will still do prenatal care if the woman is comfortable with that. And then there are other doctors that work within the same clinic that I work in, but my office specifically doesn't deliver.
Okay. Interesting.
So we do still see a decent amount of prenatal care, but I would say probably not as much as the physicians or PAs or nurse practitioners that deliver. With that said, a lot of my schedule is filled with annual exams and problem visits in regards to GYN and urogynecology. I'm easing into each field. So I started with gynecology, started working on urogynecology and OBGYN just within the past couple weeks, which has been nice because it's allowed me to really get comfortable prior to just seeing everything at once. And with the gynecology, I have my annuals, and then I keep a couple open spots for any problem visits, because as any woman knows, when we have a problem, we want to be seen pretty quickly. So it's
Yeah.
nice to be able to give women help pretty quickly.
That's awesome. Are you doing procedure?
I'll do
Okay.
IUD insertion, Nexplanon insertion, and
Yeah.
removal, any sort of cyst procedures. I can do irrigation and debridement of those. So pretty procedure heavy on some days, just
Okay.
it depends on the day. And I'll typically
Yeah.
see anywhere between 15 to 24 patients, depending on the complexity of the case.
That's great. That's a nice full clinic, and then getting to see a variety of things, do little procedures. That's kind of some of the stuff I love about derm too, is typically our patients aren't, this sounds bad, but like aren't as sick. Like
Right.
they're relatively healthy, or, you know, have stuff going on that's not like the flu or anything like that.
Yes.
Like they're generally pretty healthy. I feel like it's funny because we get compared to y'all a lot. I don't know if your patients do that. They're like, oh, y'all are as bad as the gynecologist office, or y'all are as bad as the dentist. I don't know why there's so much stigma around our specialties of being bad or painful. We have to remind ourselves, or I do, I'm used to seeing my patients in a vulnerable state, and they're not used to being in a vulnerable state. They definitely humble me with those comments, and I'm like, it's okay. We're not as bad. That's what I always say. But you guys aren't bad either.
We try not to be.
Yeah, it's all about rapport and talking to the patient, talking them through stuff when they are uncomfortable. When you were job searching, was it difficult to find a job? That's something that I'm getting a lot of questions about, because new pre-PA people or people in PA school are concerned about the job market. So as a fairly new grad, what was your experience with that?
I would say depending on the specialty, it can be difficult. So if you're kind of set, like I only wanted to apply for jobs in OBGYN. And with that said, I did find that there weren't too many jobs available, but I started looking in May and I graduated in August. So people told me I was crazy, but I said,
No.
the worst that they can say is no. So if I apply and 10 people tell me no, then I just start applying again later. So I started applying pretty early because I knew what I wanted. And with that said, I applied for a job in May and applied for a couple at that same time, but there was one that kind of encompassed both OBGYN and Urogyn. So I really had my eyes set on that one. And I surprisingly got a call the next week, and that's the job that I'm in now. I feel like a lot of people think if you're not going to graduate for a couple months, it may be too long to wait. But a lot of times, if a job is looking for a specific type of candidate, they'll be willing to wait. Especially what a lot of people don't realize is, if, say, a PA already has a job, they can't just leave their job today for the most part and go to work at this other job tomorrow. So there usually is that wait period anyway. So my advice is, if you know what you want to do, apply as early as you can and just see what happens.
Yeah, at least start looking. I was crazier than you. I started looking in January for an August graduation.
Oh, okay.
Because I was like, I want a job and I know what I want. And I had signed a contract by April.
Okay, awesome.
So that I could do my last 2 electives at my job, which was nice. So I kind of started in June until I finished PA school. I don't think it's bad at all to put feelers out. Even if they say they want experience, apply. Like, go ahead and send your resume, send your cover letter. You just never know. And what's the worst that'll happen? Like, they just don't call you back, or they say no. Then they have your resume on file and they could call later.
Yes. I found very few jobs that said new grads can apply, and I applied for them because it depends how you market yourself. So I would say just really focus on making sure that your resume is top tier and that you market yourself in a really positive way and that you're the best applicant out there, even if you are a new grad. A lot of new grads are the most eager to learn about the new job.
They like to say they're moldable.
Yes, exactly.
That's great that you're able to find that. Go ahead.
What you said earlier too, I actually did get a couple of offers just through the connections that I made on rotations, kind of like what you were saying. I would really recommend telling every preceptor that will listen what you are interested in, because most of them do have friends in the field or know someone who knows someone, and that's a really great way to make connections too.
And in medicine and the PA field, they're small. They're small worlds. There's a lot of crossover even in different areas and people who went to school together. Like my doctor I work with, she went to school in Michigan. So sometimes patients or reps will come in and they're talking about a doctor they saw up there and she knows them.
Yeah.
And it's just crazy. I'm like, how do you know people everywhere? But then when I think about it from doing this, like I know people everywhere too. And then when we go to conferences and I get to see everybody, it's really cool. And yeah, networking is so important. Well, we're about to get into application season. Hearing your story and hearing about your success with having a lower GPA and getting interviews and acceptances, and now you're a PA, will be very encouraging to everyone. Is there anything else you feel like people should know before they decide to be a PA?
Yes, a PA school is a very big time commitment, but that's such a short amount of time in the aspect of your whole life. And if you're passionate about it, it really does go by quickly. And when you graduate, you get to find a job that you love. The great thing about being a PA is if tomorrow you decided that you wanted to go into a different specialty, you can do that. I think especially for people who love a bunch of different fields, this is a really great profession too.
Amen. That's I'm like, I would never want to switch, but it's nice knowing if I needed to, I could.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for your time and coming and sharing with us.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.